located on the landfill of the hospital. So that
All right, good morning. Oh, I'm sorry. Good afternoon. You got one more? Okay. All right, and when you're done, we're ready to get rolling. Thank you, Mr. Jesse. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Gordon Plaza Task Force. I'm joined by Mr. Joe Threat. The Gordon Plaza residents, members of the law department are also in the audience with us. Angela, if you want to come up, we can start going through the agenda items. Agenda item number one, corrected offer letters. It looks like there is one remaining, 59 Gordon Plaza Drive. I believe that is being printed right now. Okay, so it's being printed right now, Mr. Hill? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hill. All right.
Testing.
Um,
Before we move on, Mr. Hill, for that, who did you make a call to and who's upstairs taking action on that? Okay, so would there be any reason that you could foresee as an obstacle to that being printed by the end of the meeting? Okay, and I want to thank Andrew for calling that to your attention. We brought up 4 last time, and we had to come up the next day to get them. And so this one right here, if we could just get it before we leave, we could truly X that off the list and keep moving forward. So thank you for that.
so that brings us to this is on Mr. Threat's agenda, which is the penalty and interest fees associated with the taxes of 5 different properties, and he can give an update on that.
Hey, good afternoon, residents of Gordon Plaza. Yes, I got that.
Okay, hold on, Mr. Threat, really quickly. What we need is we need the offer letter to match the amount on the appraisal. We need them to match, and they don't match. Yes, there was an update and it's incorrect. I'm sorry.
But I talked to Finance and Treasury Department, and what they're going to do, Angela, and for the residents, they're going to update and get me a list. Hopefully I'll have it today of all the properties.
Okay.
Now, the CFO, like in my email, I said before, is going to waive all penalties for all residents. In the meeting we had, myself and Norman White, the CFO, and Bayou Title, he's going to just take all of those penalties off. Now, the penalties will remain for any property that is pending tax sale.
Mhm.
Okay, but all the other penalties be gone. But you won't need a letter for that at closing. Bayou Title and the chief financial officer agreed that when you go to title closing, it won't be penalties on there unless you got some other issue with the property.
Okay, so we want to start off again by thanking everybody on the task force just being patient with us today. We don't foresee a reason for why this meeting needs to be extremely long, but we are also prepared not to be haphazard with any of these steps, because anything that we have talked about before, we need to move through them with certainty. So I just want to ask a couple follow-up questions to you, Mr. Threat. Let me start. can follow up with title and get as much of that as they can clarified on their end. So there's a way to do that, and we feel peaceful about that. What is not clear is the exact amount that the city of New Orleans is saying is due.
Well,
Okay,
right there, I can remove the penalties, like I said
Mhm.
earlier. The
Yeah.
taxes, if you owe taxes, the interest is compounding every day. So if I pulled it today,
Mhm.
tomorrow's gonna be a different number.
Okay,
And then the next day is gonna be a different number. So what I'm trying to do is move up to the point to where, and I talked to Bayou Title, Mr. Brent, and he said that he can see in the system what is owed.
okay.
So as we get close and the properties come in and the exceptions come in, that's when we're gonna freeze the interest and the taxes. So we're on the same sheet of music. At that time, I can give a letter.
And you're talking
But
about.
today, if I give you a letter, the numbers are gonna move.
I got you.
If that makes
No, it makes a
clarity.
lot of sense. And this is the part, lean in with me, Mr. Threat.
Mhm.
This is the part we've been trying to get to. This is the like nuts and bolts. So what we're asking for, just to be clear, is what it looks like today. Because there was a document that was already sent over. Remember the 5 individual ones?
Mhm.
We just want to see what it looks like today to make sure that the documents are matching up. The residents understand in their mind. So at the point at which they have to call for title, they can get an updated one.
Well,
at that
I'm gonna
time.
get you to today's number.
Okay, great.
I gave the last one I gave you, I think was March the 8th.
Yeah. So
Full new numbers.
so just to be clear, and I want to go one more time, because you're gonna come behind me if I leave something out, is I want to make sure that what they're seeing today is all of what is attached to this piece around taxes. I don't want, Mr. Threat, and I need your help on this. I don't want people to get that document today and find out there's some other office with another sheet of paper that says
Yeah, I
something else.
understand.
You understand what I'm saying? Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever we get in hand today, just associated with those 5 properties, that is a reflection of all that's been cared for in this building, with the full knowledge that by the time somebody gets the title, it might be a percentage shift in something pertaining to what we see on the paper. No other amount that's hovering
Right,
somewhere
I
else.
understand.
Okay.
And I talked to Treasury today. They sent me an email, said they're pulling the data. So I'll get it today.
Okay, so we're gonna get this one offer letter. That's gonna be in our hand before we leave today. Treasury is working on that. Do we believe, Mr. Threat, that that's something we can get in our hands today before we leave?
I don't know about that because it's not my department, but I'll text them right now and see
Okay,
where they are.
please, and I'll ask again before we close out. Anything else okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for that. So that's agenda item 2. We're gonna keep moving. All right, here we go. We came into the last meeting thinking we had made great strides, and we hit a little bit of a bump in the road because new information was shared. So Vice President Moreno, this one pertains to 2 things that we need clarity about. Now, I'm gonna just provide updates for everybody so we're on the same page, because the last time we were saying that we needed confirmation of the CEA agreement with TCA on the moving services. We came to this meeting, it was then named, okay, well, we need the mayor to sign it. Even prior to the mayor signing it, there were these other moves that had to make. So it's my understanding, Mr. Threat, and correct me if I'm wrong, that CEA went to TCA, the TCA sent it back to legal. Where is it now?
Ms. French, you sent that back. It's signed, the CEA is signed by TCA. So I'll let Ms. French tell me where.
Good afternoon, Ms.
Good
French.
afternoon, everyone. I received the CEA at 3:42 yesterday afternoon. I signed the CEA, and as I put in my email to Ms. Angela and the Garden Plaza resident, it requires that it is returned to the law department, and it was scanned as properly, signed in blue and returned to the law department. And I did state that that's the traditional route for executing city contracts.
Yeah, Andrew, can you confirm, have you seen the document up in law? Yes, processing for the mayor's signature.
Okay, Andrew, if I can just ask you, so since you're verifying that that's in that process, do we know, or Mr. Threat, do you know how long it takes for that process to transpire?
Andrew, why don't you come up if you don't mind? Because I'm going to ask you questions on the next agenda item anyway. Thank you. Thanks for being with us, Andrew.
My pleasure. Good afternoon,
Good
everybody.
afternoon.
So usually what'll happen is when the contract is,
Sorry, sir, they can't hear you.
oh, sorry. When the contract comes back to the law department from from whoever the vendor partner is, we prepare the folder, we get everything together and we send it down to the mayor. That usually takes place within a day or two of when we get the contract back. And then the mayor's office is generally very quick about returning it as well. And that usually takes about a day or so as well. So,
So early next week.
correct.
So if I can just ask real quick, because and bear with me, like I said, we're working through all things with the spirit of moving forward, not backwards. We don't want to move backwards. We want to move forward. So if I can just be clear, because that transpired just like within maybe the last 24 hours, is this day turnaround including today? Like, is this something that if people were upstairs working right now would make its way over to the mayor? I'm not talking about the mayor's side of things yet. I'm
Right.
just talking about internally because, and bear with me, today is Friday.
Right.
The last time we were here was Monday. 4 work days have gone by and we talking about some stuff that just happened in the last 24 hours. This is why we up here real crisp with it, because we are really vigilantly trying to move this forward because people are sitting with offer letters, making decisions in their mind. And y'all have the nerve to have a whole ass deadline at the bottom of the paper. And it's not on the people's planning, it's here. So if you could just help Andrew, the day turnaround, can you speak to that?
So yeah, it's if my understanding is correct, if it hasn't been finished being prepared by today, it'll be there first thing on Monday for the mayor's signature. And then once the mayor gets it back within a day or two after that, like I said, it's usually a 1 or 2 day turnaround from when we get it in to when it goes to the mayor's office, which includes today. And then it'll take another day or two for it to come back from the mayor's office. You generally with stuff like this too, the mayor is fairly aware, or if the mayor has provided a delegation to Mr. Montano, the signature is generally very quick and will come back.
So I'm already hearing that there's a possibility we're gonna have a task force meeting next week.
No, because it's going to come back and when the contract on this agenda issue, the contract will be fully executed and that'll be crossed off.
Okay, even though people have been vigilant, we also understand that the reason we've been pressing for this part is to know and honor, and I don't need further explanation from Ms. French because she was very clear last time that she has to reach out to moving companies with the understanding that there's a contract. And so we're just being mindful that there's a whole bunch of moving companies to be contacted, and that is a process that can take up to however many days a week. So I want to name that we just want to see things happen in the order that they're supposed to be happening so there's not a problem, even if there are folks who are moving proactively, however they're moving. So
Angela, I'd like to address that. Because we did receive the CEA, we have contacted 15 moving companies and we have already collected their insurance, licensing and document. And I have available the list of those who we've already verified, and we're going back to the next group. So we are moving forward as committed. Once we receive the CEA, we were not going to wait for the
Thank you.
execution. We have moved forward.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Appreciate
French.
that.
And Ms. French, what I'll do is I'll bird dog. I'll watch that document. As soon as law tells me it's in the mayor's office, I'll go down and talk to the mayor. We'll get it signed. I'll send you an email to NTP so you can start working.
What's that term you just used? Bird dog? That's what you do when you really paying close attention to something?
You want me to track the document?
Listen, it is this serious. I know y'all tired of this process, but we tired too. So we're just keeping it moving forward. Thank you for that, Ms. French. There's some times when people drop the ball intentionally, dropped the ball unintentionally, but the consequence is still the same. So we're trying to keep this moving forward. All right. We're going into temporary housing, Vice President Moreno. So let's go
Okay,
there.
let's do it. All right, so last time we were here, we had a legal memo that was prepared, and it was sent to you all as well to go over how rental assistance could be provided and the level of rental assistance as well. So since that time, everybody got back together. You all sent additional information, which we appreciate, and thank you for that. It looks like we do have some good news.
Mhm.
So, Mr. Gregorian, you want to take that piece?
Sure.
Pause for a second.
Yep.
We understand everybody's interpretations. Good news is not the same. So
Well,
we're just being,
Can I say this?
we're being open.
Let me rename it.
We're
Let me
hearing
rename
and
it.
then we'll follow up.
Let me
with
rename it.
rationale.
Let me rename it. Better than last week. Okay, or last time we were here, better. Okay.
So, essentially, our office and then your council as well had a conversation. We looked into the we looked into the process, and while the essentially the ordinance allows us to adopt any of the federal, any or part or all of the federal rules or federal amounts. And so we have the option to do that. The administration has already confirmed their willingness to adopt the policy and provide the 7,200 number for rental assistance, which is supposed to reflect the maximum amount allowable between the difference in whatever current rent residents are paying and the increased new rent that they would be paying at any new location. And so the administration has already accepted that we will be revising the policy to change that to go up to 7,200 as opposed to what's allowed by the state. And we just sort of we're going to present it, or not present it, but we just want to make sure that the council is in agreement with that, because I think the councils were in agreement of that was acceptable. We just needed to touch base, obviously, with the administration and with you all. So
Go ahead, Angela.
Can we just pause for a second? So what I'd like to do is there's a few people in the room. So much has happened since Monday that we just want to bring them full circle on this. And now I want to come back to you on something, Andrew, if you can just make a note about this. So essentially, the last time we were here, there was a discussion about $4,000 being the maximum for the lump sum. But when taking into consideration adjustments based on inflation, and you know, inflation is the most, right? There had been an increase up to 5,250. So the folks in the room justifiably left upset about that, because where are folks supposed to go with $5,250 in a transitional process? By the time somebody asks you for first month rent, maybe last month rent, the current month rent, okay? So we're trying to make sure that people do not have unnecessary mental, emotional, or physical burden in this process, to include the renters. We have to care for them. And I want to go on record as saying that in some cases, we're talking about a renter who might be somebody who has also gone through all of this, not at the expense of some predatory landlord, but a homeowner who's part of the family, who's working it out to see how they can pay rent to pay off the mortgage for. So all these moving parts are connected. And it's very important to know that we cannot have people land in the streets when everybody doesn't live in the same household, going to the same places. These are separate and apart families. There are people who are renters. There are people who've gotten into this situation without knowing. It's very important to know and understand that we have to care for renters in this process, and everybody matters. So even though the state law code, let me use the word code in this regard, did not care for that, the federal government, Congress had made an increase in that inflation adjustment in 2012. And the federal government, the HUD notice came out in 2014. So 7,200 definitely is more than 5,250, but I want to come back to you again, Andrew, because our hope and desire is now that this can be recognized and be honored. And I'm gonna come back to the council as well, Vice President Moreno. Where does that sit in relationship to understanding that under these codes, they're constantly talking about addressing issues around inflation adjustment? And even though that transpired in 2012 and HUD took the notice in 2014, this is 2023 at this point.
Your question is there an additional, kind of, new
Adjustment,
number,
inflation
adjustment?
adjustments
Yeah,
that can be
that's the right
made.
word.
Yes.
Adjustment based on inflation for that. I would turn it back over to legal.
So we did take a look at the HUD regulations to determine, see what new guidance or whatever they had. As far as I could tell, that guidance was still the current guidance as far as the rental assistance. They're at least, as far as my research can tell, still at 7,200. And the state is still at 5,250 from what I could see. I haven't seen any new adjustments.
Okay, so now, Andrew, I want to come back to you one more time. Just bear with me, okay? So, we understand now, and we're saying on the record that the number will not be less than 7,200. But we are asking, this is one of the moments, and I'm gonna give you the why behind it. Just bear with me. This is one of the moments, Andrew and the rest of legal, why we continue to say that we would appreciate it if people would not use laws to create barriers, but understand that if laws exist, we need to do what's necessary to problem solve. Because I really appreciated the fact that there was time and energy put into this document that you requested by Adam. You know, Adam don't come to these meetings all the time, but I know he's put some hours in to get that document. What we are saying is the residents of Gordon Plaza have been fighting this for years, and it's been since June 2022 that this has transpired. We were saying in the chambers on Monday, there's got to be something else out there. And so what we're asking is for attorneys to do their due diligence to try to problem solve in a way that is in the interest of the people of the city, rather than either create barriers, or maybe you're pulling the stuff together based on what's easily accessible, but just trying, because from 2012 until, or even 2014 to 2022, there is no doubt in my mind that people understand that there would need to be an adjustment based on inflation. And if that part could be resolved, this could really wrap up this piece. And we're saying this now because we, residents of Gordon Plaza, are sitting around toiling over these things, by the way, and problem solving these things so that we can come forward. We're saying, y'all got a whole staff. And if you would help, it would make a world of a difference, because just like nobody wanted to hear anything but the 5250 last time we was up in here, there's always a way. And we're not asking anybody to do anything that's inappropriate. We're saying, my God, the law was actually there. Can somebody find it? So that's what we're asking for. So we just want to name that we understand it's not going below 7,200, but since we got to come back up here once again anyway, because we need a mayor's signature and a few more things, we're asking if you can take it upon yourself, please, Mr. Hill, you all go behind the scenes and ask yourself, if me and my whole family was living on the landfill and going back to it tonight, and I could use my job that I get paid a salary to do to problem solve this issue, is there a possibility that we would find something that would speak to the adjustment for inflation? Because guess what? The 72 was there last time, and nobody could speak to that. So try it. Just try it for us.
So if I may just sort of clarify something about the 72,
Mhm.
the issue with the 72 and the 5250 isn't that it's, whether we knew it was here or not. It's really more of the state statute allows for any political subdivision or any state agency to decide to we can choose to make a policy decision and say,
Come on,
hey,
problem
we
solver.
want to make the change. We want to make the change. We want to go with the higher federal levels.
Mhm.
So it's not an issue of the statute hiding as much as like, is this available? And so it was something that was available. And when we saw that we had the higher number, again, we went to the administration is okay going to the higher number. You've obviously the council has if I understand correctly, you guys are okay with going to the higher number as well. So it's not really an issue of sort of going back to the laws, which number do we want to pick, and being aware that once we know that there's a higher number, we go with the higher number that we can go with.
I understand this, but let me say this one little last piece, because I think my point is being missed. Is that it is evident to us that the state of Louisiana, and dare I say the city of New Orleans, depending on the given time and the given day, under a system that has constantly had its boot on the neck of the people, that folks are not out here breaking their necks, scouring legislation to problem solve. And so the Louisiana code might not have been easily accessible because ain't nobody out here breaking their neck trying to give people the most that they are actually rightfully due and legally due. Like nobody is asking for something that's not appropriate for them to have. We are saying though that it had existed, and we definitely just want to make sure that we are not cheating people indirectly because folks are being kind of lackadaisical about it. That's what we're saying. We also know that there's a second part in here that talks to residents being entitled to up to 42 months of assistance, even if the amount exceeds 7,200. And people are not even trying to get into all that and entertain that. They're saying a very simple thing that gets repeated in these documents over and over and over again, which is that it is appropriate to make an adjustment for inflation. So I would even ask the council if you all would consider and maybe have the council's council check into what are the possibilities in ensuring that people are caring for adjustment for inflation.
So let me just make one more
Yes.
clarification. So we kind of make sure I've provided the whole all the information. So one of the things too with the general process is when even at the federal level or state level, you're presenting documentation for the difference in rent, and then you're being provided that amount up to the cap of 7,200. What we decided in this particular case is, given the situation, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that everybody who's going to ask for the rental assistance is going to need the full 7,200. So instead of going through that whole process, what we're saying is once you're going to be eligible for that 7,200. Now we are going to ask to make sure so that we're covering and doing things the right way. We're going to need a written lease so that we can say, hey, here's a documentation. This is a written lease. These folks are being required to move to a new location. Here's their lease. We're going to allow them to have the 7,200. And so that's why we made the decision to just go with the 7,200 and not say like the usual, we're gonna do the calculations and take a look and see what the number is. And if it's less than 7,200, you're gonna get the lesser number. We don't anticipate that happening, at least in the conversations I had with your counsel, with Mr. Swensik and with the city attorney. So we're gonna go with the full 7,200.
Yeah, so what you're saying, if somebody shows you a lease, you write a lump sum check to them of the 7,200.
That's what we're gonna do in this case,
Okay.
correct?
Yeah, I do agree though with Angela. I don't see what at all the harm would be in another circle back around, look, getting Adam, our executive council involved to see if there are any additional adjustments for inflation. You know, hey, you know, what's the harm there? And there may have been something that may have been inadvertently missed that we can, you know, work to correct.
Thank you for that. And then one more thing, and it's going to come back, Mr. Threat. And it's also going to come back, Vice President Moreno, to that document that we had a few weeks ago when we thought this part was going to go a little faster around the step-by-step process. Remember that one sheeter with the step-by-step process we talked about, like if a person accepts their offer all the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
For the purchase. Got it.
Right,
got it.
that one.
Yep.
In addition to that, Title has their own step-by-step process in terms of what happens internally. So I want folks to listen very carefully to the language, because this is setting us up for the very last agenda item today. Is folks are talking about, well, bring us a lease and then we can do the things, this, that, and the other. We just want to make sure that at the point at which an owner says, listen, I'm picking up the phone now and I'm making a call and I'm about to get this process started, all these things have to be cared for so nobody gets stuck in the process. And whatever folks think that they've seen of being agitated, of the community being agitated, there ain't halfway no agitation that you can see when people are actually stuck in the middle of a situation that is adding to their mental, emotional, and physical burden. Like, we are really trying to care for this on the front end, so that by the time folks start making those calls back to back, it's smooth sailing. But if it's not, it will not be because of the residents. It will be because of this process. And we're trying really hard to ask everybody, be at the table, lean in with us on this, because we have to care for people on the front end. So I want to thank you, Adam, for being willing, and whichever other attorneys from the city of New Orleans, hopefully Adam can come back into the mix as well. We thank Andrew, Chief of Staff from Moreno for getting in the mix with this. We need people to turn over every stone to see how we can problem solve in a way that's in the interest of the residents, because this can make this whole process smoother afterwards.
And Angela, Joe and I just talked, and he and I are going to work out that process
Mhm.
on how to provide the funds quickly to the renters as soon as it's needed. So he and I'll huddle up, we'll get on the phone later today. Joe and I talk on the weekends too, poor man. So we'll figure out a path to get this resolved as quickly as possible, and we'll put it on paper
Yeah,
so that everybody can see how
Yeah.
it's going to work.
yeah. So when people are out there in the streets sounding alarm, talking about, oh, the residents got their offer letters, them offer letters are only as useful as the rest of this stuff is getting done. So while people are still talking about protocols and procedures and all the kind of stuff, if people would have called the line on the day they got the letter, the stuff's not ready for them. So we need to get this going. So thank you for that. Okay. All right. And thank you, Andrew, for that. Thank you for leaning in, Andrew. Okay. Mr. Threat, we're talking about relocation costs, and we understand that there are rules, regulations, laws, and all the things. So the residents are not coming with anything other than what we have said all the time. But we also understand also that there are different pathways to go about addressing this. So let me just name for everybody. As it relates to each of these, I want to pass this up real quick. Mr. Threat had made a request after the last meeting. The residents had listed out these different expenses, and the residents thought listing out those expenses would be helpful because they didn't want to just drop a dollar amount and say, hey, this is what we need. They've been having these conversations since they began this fight, like being honest about what they need. So because that request came from you yesterday, Mr. Threat, we turned it around to you, but we also did not want to be flighty. The same way we're asking you to do your due diligence, the residents are doing theirs. And to be honest with you, I'm gonna say one more time, the reasons folks have been asking to care for their mental, emotional, and physical burden is because they have to toil with this every night. And this is stressful, okay? So we're trying to eliminate this whole process. And so what you're getting is essentially the same thing you've got. But, when folks is making requests at 9 and 10 o'clock at night and shit, it can be a little rough. So we're turning this back around because the conversation we will have in the chambers on Monday is just to flesh it out a little bit more. So I just want to give you room and space to speak to whatever you're thinking about, because we see that, we know that there are lump sum options around here. We also know that there are situations by which people may entertain. There not being necessarily a ceiling because folks can run back and forth with the receipts and all those things. But we're trying to eliminate as much confusion as possible and make this as seamless as possible. But we're also saying that if there are opportunities for the city of New Orleans to pick up additional costs, and we're not asking the city of New Orleans to pay anything other than there's money allocated sitting in Liberty Bank, $35 million collecting interest right now. So we know the money is not a problem. We just need to make sure that people are clear about what is being requested and why. And the residents are going to have to pay for these things one way or another. So I just want to turn it over to you and see where you are in relationship to this.
Well, the reason, Angela, that I asked for the descriptions, the last list didn't have any descriptions on it, just had.
No, you didn't, because
Right.
the line by line that was given to you was a courtesy that the resident, nobody in this entire process, Mr. Threat, has asked the residents anything about one of their primary demands, which has been relocation costs. We brought it up meeting after meeting after meeting. So when the thought was give a description. So for example, if it says, homeowners insurance or something, people want you to define homeowners insurance. It's like, okay, we can do that, but we want you to have what you need. So I'm just asking right now, do you have what you need?
I have what I need. When
Okay.
I got the descriptions, my duties are, once I get the description, if it's a price that I need to pay
Mhm.
or authorize, I have to send it to law.
Okay,
So I got the descriptions, I sent it to law, and I just need law to talk about relocation.
okay.
for you
And
guys.
so this is why we're coming once again with this little hard copy here. Because the one that was sent over that you have, folks come back again, asking scrutinizing questions. They want to know what color are the drawers and what do the socks smell like? That document there is just to go a little bit more in a little bit more detail if needed to prevent this back and forth if necessary. So we're hoping that suffice for providing the description that's needed for each of those items.
Yes, it did. And I just needed some clarity because law would be asking me questions about each one. And I just wanted to hear from the residents what each one of those categories
Yes.
were and get the descriptions and get it to law for an opinion.
Okay, so Mr. Hill and the rest of the team from legal, Andrew here from everybody from legal, is that even if someone asks a question about what you received yesterday, we're just coming back one more time with some reinforcement to provide whatever last little piece of clarity is needed to move that forward. And so the real question that we have is, at what point in time will we know? Because we're going back to turnaround time and we're going back to tying up loose ends because these last few pieces are the things people need to make determinations about going forward with title. So what do you think here in terms of turnaround on this? To know something.
I'll get with Mr. Hill. We'll work on something as soon as possible to take a look at what the law says about relocation costs. I'll also talk to Adam again about the rental assistance portion of it. We had worked together, especially after getting the new information. So we'll take a look at this. We'll take a look at what you guys are asking for, and we'll see what the law says on that and see what we can do. And we'll make it a high priority like we have been with everything else.
If we can emphasize, well, now hold on, Andrew. Because I know they got you new coming to the table, okay? I want to say this. I want to honor the fact that you said high priority like everything else, but I want to tell you, for some folks, it has not been a high priority like everything. There has been no everything else for some of the people, okay? So we understand that whatever discussion has to happen there, but I want to make super clear one of the main points for the day is it's not just, yes, it is about what can be resourced or funded, but it's also about the ease by which people can access it. So Mr. Threat, I really wanted to make sure I said that part super clearly with law here and with you here and for the administration. It's not just about can people get reimbursed for things? That is it. But people are talking about ease and access. And so if there are pathways that prevent the running back and forth, we want to try to ask you to do the same thing we've asked law to do when it comes to, and maybe you have to do it in harmony with law to figure out what those pathways are to expedite that process, because folks have fees and things that they need to do on the front end that right now they're holding offer letters. They don't have money. They're holding offer letters. So at the point at which they make these calls and they have to make determinations, there are lots of things that have to happen between the time they make a call and between the time that they actually experience money. And so if they get money and it's not money that meets their needs, that's going to be a problem. And listen, we're working to prevent those because we understand what that's going to mean. We are preparing ourselves accordingly to sound the alarm if residents have problems in this process. And we want to be super clear about that. So if we can mitigate that on the front end, let's do it. Like, let's lean in together and let's do what we need to do to make this a smooth pathway in the best interest of everybody. The city want to cheer, but the residents have to make sustain their lives. And that's more important than anything.
I'll coordinate with law and we'll talk about today, today and Monday, and get you an answer back on that. So I'm just waiting on law to tell me what I can and cannot do. I've got also on the 5 properties you wanted the taxes. I got that from Treasury, so I just sent it over to Vice President Moreno. So
Okay.
we've got those right now.
So we can ask them. Okay, Andrew and Mr. Hill and the rest of legal, let me say this one more time. Mr. Threat just said he's gonna turn stuff over to law. He waiting to hear back from law. So if everybody's waiting to hear back from law, we are asking for these moving parts to come together with some harmony here and try to proactively problem solve these things, not just, the first thing pop up on the screen. We're asking people to please be intentional and deliberate with the lives, because on the other end of this, there'll be people impacted by up to 70, 67 properties that could move forward. And that'd be one less day we could be in everybody's hair if everything could just move forward smoothly, because we really would like to see it move forward. We're not creating obstacles. We are doing everything we can to create pathways and bridges to get the residents of Gordon Plaza to the other side. Okay, anything else, Mr. Thread, in terms of relocation costs before we go down to this last agenda item?
No, that's all I have right now.
Okay, so Council President, there's a few things. I just want to name a couple things in regards to the final process, because you remember, I'm going back to the one sheeter now, okay? Here's the thing. In this next Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting, if it's possible, and I want to thank TCA because they've been very vigilant about coming to these meetings since they've been on board. If we can maybe ask Bayou Title to come back one more time.
Okay.
And we haven't asked Bayou Title to be here every single time because there's parts that lean in on one person or not. But there are moving parts here that we need to make sure are good to go on city side and then ready for Bayou Title. I also want to just say, if Mr. Brin is listening, that we appreciate the report back that we received from each resident that has called over to ask a question, that they've been quick, fast, in a hurry to get back to people. They treat people with dignity and respect thus far. We want that to continue. And so if we can be proactive before people make final decisions, and I'm talking about masses of people making final decisions, that we can streamline this would be great. So here are a couple of things I want to bring up in advance of that meeting, Council Vice President, is that when it comes to this final process, part of one of the things that has been named is, and the residents are pleased with this part, but I'm gonna get to the part that they're not pleased with. They're pleased with knowing that they don't have to worry about somebody coming to put them out their house, that there's grace in the transition, and that they can choose their closing date. What we need a little bit more clarity on, and maybe this is something Brent can say, but maybe this is coming from the city of New Orleans. We don't want to take for granted that, remember, when somebody picks up the phone to call, they're setting an appointment to go in and determine closing date, right? But even if they determine closing date, they are hoping, wishing, and praying that as they are searching for healthy houses of choice, that the turnaround time on the other end is going to align accordingly. So we need to know where the grace is in terms of a resident saying, I've determined a closing date, but there's a little tussle on here because lots of people looking for houses at the time, and people are trying to navigate what that means, because two things. One, if a resident sets a closing date, that doesn't mean that they may be prepared to physically be out of the space quite yet. And we don't want to turn around where somebody, a resident Gordon Plaza, go to the store to get bread and they come back and there's a lock on the door. That's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we just want to ensure that we're not taking that for granted. And the reason I'm asking y'all to care for this is because I know that people say, yeah, to get folks out of their face. But then what happens is when the practical realities drop on people, we're going to be right back here in your face. Like I'm trying to tell you, our goal is to be to the point where people start calling. We already know it's smooth sailing at that point. And that is one thing that is still unsettling, and we have to remedy that. We also know and understand.
Let me speak to that real
Yeah.
quick before you get to your next point.
Okay.
First of all, there is no closing that can occur unless you have the explicit sign off and the presence or somebody given the power of attorney to sign off on the document.
Mhm.
So it's not like, you can say like, I'm going to close, in 30 days and then nobody shows up and somebody locks your door. Like that can't
Mhm.
happen. But to your point, which, and I'm hearing you, and especially since there've been
Hear
no
me.
doubt
hear
about
me,
it,
President.
no doubt about it, trust issues and everything else.
Yes.
I definitely think that, I think we need to bring Bayou Title back, Mr. Brent back. He can speak to that, and then also have some type of document in writing,
Yes,
laying it all out so that everybody's clear
yes,
that, and a lot of different things can happen. You can be, saying that you're going to close in 3 months, for example, and you think maybe you found, a new house where you think you're going to be able to purchase it, but for some reason, maybe something didn't go as fast as you had
Mhm.
planned.
Mhm.
And now all of a sudden, you're not quite prepared to move in 3 months. You, no doubt about it, should be able to change up that date
yes.
so that to your point, nobody's just kicked out, because
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense either. So
And
yes,
in the reverse as well, right? Somebody might say it's a 3-year, a 3-month journey down. But if the opportunity presents itself in a month from now,
Yeah,
a
no doubt.
resident finds the right situation, they want to be able to move and not have to be like, okay, what's
Yep.
going on, Tada? How can we
right,
shift
no
this?
doubt, no doubt.
One
Yeah,
thing I wanted to loop back about that with
Sure.
Mr. Threat, please, on behalf of the administration, legal, everybody in here, we also understand that when it comes to people who are just doing their job, like TCA and Bayou Title, really the only folks we said we really needed at the beginning of this journey, I'm gonna say that, is that a lot of times their hands are held or direction is provided coming from the city. So if the city says, we want this process again, and it's been said before, but I want to make sure people not missing this piece, is if it said that the goal and objective is to support the residents to move as smoothly as possible and as peacefully as possible. If the city of New Orleans wants that to happen, Bayou Title is going to adjust accordingly because they know that the city is the buyer. It's not somebody who's like, I got to get into that house tomorrow and do this thing because we're moving on the landfill.
Yeah, and I think that, Mr. Brent from Bayou Title, we had a good meeting with the CFO for the city to work out that process you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, when Mr. Brent gets here, he'll probably memorialize that and just
Yes,
type it out. So
Yes.
everybody's clear on what happens with that.
yes,
I think that during the process, initially it'll go to law department, go to the CFO, Norman White, get his signature, then it comes to me
mm-hmm.
to start doing all the things I need to do to make sure the money's gonna move. And then after that happens, it'll come back down, it'll go back to Brett, and after we close it and we get the documents back, it'll come back to me for property management to do the title transfers.
Yes.
So we had a good meeting about that process in detail.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Brett can memorialize what we talked about in the next meeting when he comes here. That should be clear.
Yes.
Okay.
And to also see if that's how it's manifesting for him in the current moment. Because he did say that, looking at what he's got for the residents, this will probably be a more seamless thing for him than he's ever seen in his life.
Right.
Because the residents have done their part.
Right. Exactly.
It's just important
So
to make
I think
sure.
that part's gonna work out. And once we do all the mechanics, once the residents gets the call from Bayou Title,
Yeah.
I think that the transfer of the funds, I think that's a day. That's just that day. Because once we do all the mechanics to get the documents and everything through the city, back to the title company, then when residents get the phone call, to my understanding, the transfer is happening
Mhm.
of cash.
So a lot of things are supposed to be happening like now, right? A lot of things are like a day turnaround type thing. So we would like the next Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting to be sooner than later. And I've already had, just for the record, I'm going to turn around and look to the residents for what their availability is, but we know Tuesday is not a day. So I don't know what you guys have on your calendars. If you
what is it? What does the 27th look like? That's Thursday. You can't. Okay. Mr. Threat's not available on the 26th or 27th,
Can't do
or
28th.
28th. What about the first? Monday, the 1st, which is about a week away.
No,
say it one more time.
Monday, the 1st?
No.
It's not available?
Tuesday 2nd.
Tuesday, the 2nd? Tuesday, the 2nd,
Where's,
which is
you don't have anything next week?
Mr.
not
Threats.
with Mr. Threat here. He's got a FEMA conference. It's very, he needs to be at. What about, can we do the second? You guys can pick a time in the afternoon,
It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday? Yeah, Mr. Thread will be here,
3 or 4?
3, 4 o'clock.
Four.
Do you like usually the afternoon? 4 o'clock? 4
May
o'clock?
2nd,
4
May
o'clock.
2nd,
May
Tuesday.
2nd, 4 o'clock. That'll get,
Tu-
in the meantime, Angela, I think we'll
Yes.
do what we've been doing is obviously just keep sending communications and things like that along the way. Feel free to send any additional, questions our way, as well. And particularly questions for, Mr. Brent, from Bayou Title that you all may have that we can pass along to him as well.
Mr. Threat, a couple things. Let me just name these, two couple things, real quick. I was feeling a little peaceful till we realized that you are completely unavailable next week. Because it makes me wonder if any work is gonna get done next week.
Well, work's gonna get done next week. Like I said, I've got we got a very important, as y'all know, we got the FEMA region administrator coming in to give us time, work with a time extension, so we can finish all the construction going in. So that's very, very important. And we're gonna be taking him out to the site. So those 2 days, briefing the mayor and everything is pretty important. 26th, 27th are the days I'm unavailable for that.
Okay, two more things, because we need alignment within the administration on this, is that number one, and really, if you understand, I want to be super clear, this stuff that we waiting on and coming back for, we're waiting on the city. So we need people to be clear that this little deadline that's on the paper, like, that has to just be not even be a thing. Because if we were taking the deadline serious, this should all be done by now. It should, like all this should be done by the time there's a deadline on the paper. You see where I'm going with this? So there's that. Final question, Mr. Threat. So we had the question about closing. The residents can choose their closing date. But the follow-up question to that is, how much time do people have to still be able to access and be in the home after the closing date if they need to be? Because all this time, that was the discussion about the up to a year. Now, nobody's trying to be in there that long.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying to you is, once the closing date is established, depending on how that works out with people being able to access their house, I'm telling you, it might not be even until the week after, or the month after, for the moving company to come to get the stuff if the closing has happened at that time.
Yeah, I think,
You see?
Angela, I see what you're saying. I think with that, once you have a closing date, once you sign the documents, it's done. So I think what we need to talk to Mr. Brent about is the flexibility that he will need to explain, which I know he'll be fine with, is the flexibility that if you find out, let's say the day before closing, that things are not going to work out. I don't know, maybe the moving company, there's I don't know, there could be bad weather. It could be a million different things where you need to move that closing date a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks because you need to be in there a little bit longer. Then that's how you would change it up. That you would have.
Come here, Mrs. LaDuina. No, there's a little nuance. There's a seemingly little nuance, but it's a big deal in terms of, come on, Mrs.
We have that part. What we're asking is, once we sign go to closing.
Yep.
Sign, get our money, we will need our money to purchase another home. So once we've done that, what time period, because then the city will own the homes. What time period do we have to stay in those homes before we move out?
Because
That's
the
my-
agreement was up to a year.
Yeah,
already.
and then somebody else said 6 months. So we need that, we need that time, and we need it in writing.
Yeah, we'll discuss that more with Mr. Brent, and he can answer those questions better than I can. I don't
But
want
the
to.
city is gonna own the property at that point.
Mhm.
So that's up to the city
Right.
to tell us how long we can stay in that house, because we've sold the house to you all. So that's the city's, and needs to answer that. You see where I'm coming?
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's not on-
yeah.
it's
Well,
not
I
Mr. Brent,
Yeah,
Mr. Brent
I
is-
see what you're saying, Ms. Ladwina.
and issuing the checks.
Yep. The other, yeah, and yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, but I don't have the answers, all the answers for you right now.
Oh,
Let me work on that, Miss Merrill, because like I say, property
Like-
management, we're gonna own the property.
correct.
So let me work on that piece of it for you and get you an answer next. week.
Okay. all
Okay.
right.
And just to be clear, one more time, from minds in community at large, is that we understand the necessity of that being a quick turnaround when a family's moving in and a family's moving out. But this is a situation where nobody is moving in on the back end. So they just need that grace, because this situation means they've got to access their funds to pursue their next process, and everybody's going to do that differently. They understand that. So we just need that to be resolved. Does that make sense?
Yep, makes sense. And I think too that, we'll bring in Mr. Brent and he can walk everybody through that process, or even have individual conversations as
Yeah.
well. too.
But that piece right there, we just want to make sure that it's clear on the city side, because he is also going to be looking for guidance from the city on that.
All right, so.
It can be
next meeting-
discussed after.
Yeah, so next meeting, once again, for everybody, is on Andrew, May 2nd, at 4:00, May 2nd, 4:00.
Okay, before we go, can we
And I
get
do
that
have a
offer
public
letter?
Comment too.
Where is it, sir? Okay, Mr. Perkins has an offer letter.
All right, Mr. Larry Morgan wanted to make a public comment. Mr. Morgan, please come on up.
Mr. Threat, you also have those tax documents?
I can send them. I'll send them over to Miss Marilyn.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Come on up, Mr. Morgan.
Good evening to everybody in the house.
Good evening.
Larry Morgan represents south, east, and west of NOLA. I won't take up too much of your time today, but this request has been pushed to me to address it today. What NOLA wants to see these people here be given every penny of that money, because the reason is I read an article where there was something similar to this, and there was money left over, and what it did, it went to the city. We don't want to see that happen, because this money was addressed from Washington to these people for their cause, and they're entitled to every penny of that money. Thank you very well.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. All right, everyone. See you in about a week and a half. Have a great weekend, everyone.